Fox News Alert, still no official cause of that Florida condo collapse. A study, however, published last year by our next guest revealed the land it sits on has been gradually sinking a little bit at a time since the 1990s.
Florida International University professor Shimon Wdowinski joins us now with his findings. Good morning to you, Professor.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Tell us what you found when you studied this building.
Okay, our study focused on land subsidence in Miami Beach and Norfolk because these two communities have been subjected to frequent flooding. As sea level increases, there were more flooding in both communities, and we wanted to evaluate what was the contribution of land subsidence to that, because flooding can occur or because sea level is rising or the land subsides.
Sure. So
we use a technology which is called INSAR, which stands for Interferometric Synthetic Aperture Radar. It's based on satellites that transmit a signal from very high elevation, about 400 miles, and the signal interacts with the surface, with objects on the surface, and some of it return to the satellite.
Right.
Now, in that case, over Miami Beach, we found that there were pockets of subsidence. Most of the subsidence was in the western part of the city, where we expected that because that part of the city was built on reclaimed wetlands, and then this wetland was filled with soil that slowly settled in. We call it soil consolidation, and we see some pockets of that. But still, the rates are pretty low. It's about 1 to 3 millimeters per year. Okay. The one place that was unusual in that respect was this place in Surfside, which we observed a cluster of these points, showing us that the condo building was moving at about 2 millimeters per year, right, which is very small.
Okay, and so, Professor, so that the condo that collapsed was sinking because of the subsidence, as you say, of 2 millimeters a year. Okay, so what could that?
Let me just correct.
Okay.
What we observed, the observation was that the building was moving down.
Right.
Now we interpreted at the time as land subsidence, but it can be also something within the building itself. Because our focus was about land subsidence, we interpret it as land subsidence.
Okay.
But it can also reveal that the building was moving into the soil or without the movement in the soil.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. So my question is, could that have caused the building collapse?
Well, the building collapsed because it reached a certain amount of failure. It can lead to that. And now these slow movements, they usually, typically, when we go to buildings where we see something like that, we see cracks. So things like that is not unusual. Right. What happened remember that these observations were in the 1990s, from 1993 to 1999. What happened since then, we don't know if it stopped or it accelerated. We're now working on a new data set that will allow us to evaluate that. But it means that at the time when we looked, the process was very slow. The things probably reached the threshold for failure just last week, but there was some movement over there in the 1990s and most likely continued afterward.
Okay. Professor, word is when you heard about a building collapse, you knew exactly what building it was. You thought it was this building. If so, why? And should other people in similar buildings be worried today?
Okay, so we pointed out that the building because it was unusual. It was the only cluster that we saw along the buildings over there.
Plaster.
People should be worried. First, they have to check to see their buildings if it's in good conditions. What we can do, what we did in the future, that's what I'm promoting now, is to use this technology to see if there's movement in buildings.
Yeah.
And now this is just flagging that something may be wrong. But it's the responsibility of the owners is to check if something is wrong, if something is moving, if there is a structural problem and they need to fix it.
Yeah.
We cannot really detect these things. We can just flag might be a problem.
Did you flag any other buildings in that area?
No.
Okay.
But we didn't flag because that wasn't the focus of our study.
Right.
Our study was focused on land subsidence, how it impacts flooding in the community of Miami Beach and Norfolk.
Interesting stuff. All right, Professor.
So we didn't focus on building. We focused on the land.
Right.
Indeed.
See if
All
we
right.
should build that wall.
Professor, thank you very much for joining us. Interesting stuff.
You are very welcome. Thank you.